Finally, common sense has prevailed. The judicial system have done their job, and Tommy Robinson has been acquitted of all charges against the Terrorism Act. The fact that this man had to stand trial under that such act shows the state of this country and how the government tried to silence a man for having a voice, for silencing a man who speaks the truth. And this is why this is a major win for people like you and I, because the government cannot control the narrative anymore. Thank goodness for this verdict. Thank goodness that the common sense has prevailed. I'm going to show you all the evidence of this case. I'm going to show you the reports live from the courtroom today and what the judge actually said, in which he slandered the police, slandered the government, and could not get his head around Tommy's arrest. This is going to be one interesting video. So, welcome along to True Brit Media. This is the channel that speaks the truth, exposes the truth, and lives the truth, and the truth will be heard. And the truth today is Tommy Robinson was falsely arrested under the Terrorism Act, and this was a complete waste of time for taxpayers, complete waste of time for Tommy and the judicial service, and those who are involved in his arrest should hang their head in shame. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you love this type of content. We're on the grow. We're trying to find and hit 20,000 subscribers, so help me get there. Smash the like button if you're happy with the news of what I'm talking about today with Tommy Robinson being acquitted of all charges. And get in the comment section and let me know your thoughts on this one. I'm sure a lot of you will be very, very happy with this. So let's get straight into the details of the case in which Ezra Levant produced from the courtroom. We're going to break it down tweet by tweet because this is why we love independent journalism, because they can give us the truth, not the bullshit that the BBC would have said. So Ezra says, I'm now in the public gallery of Courtroom 1 in the Westminster Magistrate Court. 2 feet in front of me in the courtroom itself are 12 regime journalists. Although the judge has accepted my Canadian credentials, I've been told to sit in the public gallery. Once again, the mainstream media trying to shut down an independent journalist because they know that he's going to produce the truth. Remember, guys, the BBC kicked off last time about Ezra Levant being in the journalist section, and they forced him to go to the public gallery. But here we go. I don't mind it at all, except there's a thick plastic barrier that makes it hard to hear. I'm with other citizens journalists back here, but none but me are allowed to have their laptops open. The UK has a real problem with access to justice. They favour regime journalists. Another insight into our courts, and I would love to know your thoughts on this one. Why is it one rule for one and one rule for the other? And 12 accredited journalists are, by definition, part of the establishment. There's an inherent bias against Tommy Robinson, including excluding citizens journalists. I predict this will have to change in the years ahead. The judge is in, Sam Guzzi. He calls the court to order. He addresses Tommy Robinson, who is in a room by himself behind a sound barrier. The judge now recounts the facts of the matter. Tommy driving to the Channel Tunnel in a car when he was pulled over by police and detained. The judge recounts that Tommy was recording his interaction with the police until they took his phone away from him. The judge recounts how Tommy had his legal rights explained to him, that Tommy refused to turn over his cell phone password because he had sensitive information on his phone. And that's the bit that bothers the establishment, because they want to know who Tommy Robinson's sources are. They want to know who's leaking his information, who's being and exposing these grooming gangs, who is giving out credible information. That's why they want his phone. That's why they want his phone. The judge recounts that Tommy was warned and then warned again. The judge recounts that Tommy talked to Tommy's lawyer. The judge says that otherwise Tommy cooperated with interrogation of him. The judge now refers to the law, the Terrorism Act. He recalls that the purpose of the law is to integrate people for terrorism, commission, preparation, instigation of terrorism. The judge explains the purpose of the law. That's relevant, I think, because none of the questions put to Tommy touched on terrorism. Weird that, isn't it? Charging someone from the Terrorism Act, but not actually asking him any terrorist-related questions. Fighting terrorism, the importance of which can be scarcely be overstated. Those who've watched the recent spree of knife attacks in the UK, none of which have been deemed terrorism, might like a word. And look at that one. That's so true. Judge says there are safeguards in place to handle confidential journalistic information and phones that seize. Judge cites various cases establishing precedents for the use of Terrorism Act and the search provision. Judge says the exercise of the search power does not require there to be suspicion of an offence. So Tommy there would have been sort of wounded in that one because he hasn't committed an offence as such, but they wanted to search him. The judge says you can't be convicted under law if the search itself is unlawful. The judge says there are protected characteristics about which the cops can't interrogate. That includes political and religious beliefs. Hard word on that political one. Tommy and his political beliefs is why he was arrested in the first place. Asking someone about legitimate political beliefs and activities is not fair game for interrogation, says the judge. Again, that's Tommy's main defense. Judge, was the purpose of the stop legit? Were the protected characteristics an important part of the interrogation? These are the two tests to see if the search is valid. Having reviewed the law, the judge moves on to the evidence. The lawfulness of the stop is his focus. Judge refers to the first cop, who drank whole water on the stand. That cop had said that Tommy was unusual because he's driving a fancy car and bought his train ticket the day of travel to go to Spain. That was the sum of his terrorism. Crazy, right? Crazy to make an arrest on him driving a car and buying a train ticket, but there we go. The judge recounts the cop lacked some answers in cross-examination, including what powers he was using and what the limits of these powers were. This was a key assertion by the defense lawyer. The judge recounts the TikTok timeline of Tommy's detention, including Tommy being made to part in public view for great length. The judge recounts that the cop testified he couldn't even recall the questions he put to Tommy. That's shocking. The judge refers to the cop's reference to the EDL disbanded a decade ago as a political line of questioning. The judge then goes into the next police witness. And again, because that cop recognised Tommy, the judge refers to a third police witness. This cop claimed it was Tommy's behaviour that made him interrogate him. The last cop took notes but destroyed them. Wow. What a cover that is. Judge said the third cop testified that he didn't know what questions were being put to Tommy. Big up the hot fuzz. Judge says Tommy didn't testify in the trial, but no inference can be taken from that. Judge recalls that Tommy's lawyer pointed out that no questions put to Tommy touched on terrorism. Facts. Judge recalls that Tommy's lawyer argued that Tommy's politics were a central reason for his arrest and detention interrogation under the Terrorism Act. Judge is concerned that officers have no real recollection of what happened. What was the dominant purpose of interrogation appropriate? Tommy was waiting to make 40 minutes before he's given proper responses. This missing information affects the credibility of the cops. Police testimony lacked vigor or rigor. It was actually what you stood for that caused you to be targeted. This, at the forefront of my concern, none of the officers can. Judge, the police wishing to question to terrorism may wish to explore your associations, but in this case, based on the evidence, it was your political views. The officers, what questions they asked with any degree of reliability. This was driven by your political beliefs. That is, it wasn't terrorism. There's no evidence at all to suspect terrorism. What's the purpose of the stop? Are Tommy's beliefs the central purpose of the arrest? Judge answers those questions. 1, I cannot be sure. 2, protected characteristics has an influence. I cannot get out of my mind that your beliefs is why you were arrested. In light of my findings, the decision to stop you was not lawful. Judge tells Tommy to stand, says he's acquitted, public gallery cheers, and the raging media look very glum. Bish, bash, bosh. That was a lot of reading, but I want to give you the full case of what's just happened. And Tommy Robinson must be on cloud 9 that finally justice has prevailed. Finally, he's been acquitted of these stupid charges. But what makes you realise is this. The mainstream media, the establishment have massively, massively effed up. He should never have been in court. The British state keep trying to persecute him, and today he was found not guilty. But the worrying case of state of affairs is this. What next? What next will they try and stick on Tommy? What next will they try and find him guilty for? What will they try and get this man behind bars for? Because he's a threat. He's a voice of the people. He has sensitive information. He's doing his journalistic approach as a freelance to find the truth. And that is justice. And the police who arrested him, the police who detained him, the police who tried to interrogate him, the police who absolutely shit themselves on stand, for me, how can they be part of law enforcement when they're not enforcing the law properly? Tommy Robinson is found not guilty of being a terrorist. Let that sink in. Make sure you smash a like, comment, all that good stuff. I'm out of here, people. Justice for Tommy. Ta-da.